Russia invading Israel as predicted in the scriptures of truth. Now you might say, well, why talk about Russia invading Israel? Well, because there are Bible prophecies about it. And those Bible prophecies uniquely fit our time. So if we went to the 2 chapters before Ezekiel 38, we find reference to Israel, as in the nation of the Jews, coming back into the land. Now, that's very significant, as probably many of you would realise, because up until 1948, there was no nation of Israel for something like 2,000 years. So in Ezekiel chapter 36 and verse 24, it says, "For I will take you from among the heathen," this is God speaking about Israel, to Israel, "I will take you, Israel, from among the heathen and gather you out of all the countries and bring you into your own land." And that happened progressively from 1917 through till 1948 and onwards, last century. And of course, 2 chapters later is Ezekiel chapter 38. Now, when we go to Ezekiel chapter 41, we are in the midst of a prophecy that comes after chapter 38 about God's kingdom being established on the earth. And here's verse 1. "Afterward, he brought me to the temple and measured the post 6 cubits broad on one side, 6 cubits broad on the other, which was the breadth of the tabernacle." So here is, in chapter 41, a description of the temple that's going to be built when Jesus Christ returns. So all this helps to establish, if you like, the time setting for Ezekiel 38. It's got to be in the latter days. And in fact, it says that, doesn't it? In verse 8 of Ezekiel 38, it says, "After many days thou shalt be visited. In the latter years thou shalt come into the land." So the timing is latter years. What does latter years mean? Well, the Hebrew that's translated here latter is a common word in Hebrew, and it means the end. So it's the end of the years. So that carries the idea of an end of time, doesn't it? And it's also in verse 16. "And thou shalt come up against my people Israel," this is Russia, "will come up against my people Israel as a cloud to cover the land. It shall be in the latter days." Again, latter is that word that means end of days. Okay, so we've got prophecies in the Bible that speak about Russia coming to invade Israel. And why? Well, what does that matter? Does it really matter to us? We might say, so what? Well, the so what is that this is part of a whole sequence that talks about there's going to be a huge war involving all nations. There's going to be a massive earthquake when Russia invades Israel. Verse 19 of chapter 38, "Surely in that day there shall be a great shaking in the land of Israel." And that expression shaking is used of earthquakes. So there's going to be a huge earthquake. We learn from other passages in the Bible that this earthquake is going to cause massive loss of life across the globe because the earthquake opens up a space in Israel of about 40 kilometres. It's a huge, huge chasm, isn't it? And as a result, that Jesus Christ will return. Then there'll be the kingdom of God on earth. And for all those who are true followers of Jesus Christ, that means immortality, being able to live forever with Jesus Christ. So it's a pretty important sort of subject, isn't it? So let's get into the detail now. Now, in looking at Ezekiel chapter 38, we have a whole bunch of nations mentioned. And you can see on the map that there's a lot of names written there, and you might recognise some from the chapter that was read by our chairman tonight. So what's the story about? In essence, the story is about that the nations in red, or reddish colours, decide, for reasons that will be explored in a moment, to come and invade Israel. And the nations in blue, with the exception of Egypt, the nations in blue say, "Hey, what do you think you're doing?" But they don't really do a lot to oppose the invasion. So to establish what these nations are, I'm going to put them on the map. How can we prove that they are correctly identified here? We're going to start by looking at Genesis chapter 10, which is a description of all the nations that came as a result of the flood at the time of Noah. So in Genesis chapter 10, we have the genealogy of the three sons of Noah. There was Shem, Ham, and Japheth. So it says in Genesis 10 verse 1, now these are the generations of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and unto them were sons born after the flood. And then we start with Japheth. The sons of Japheth. And you can see there's Gomer and Magog and Tubal and Meshech. There's also Togarmah and Tarshish that are there of the sons of Japheth. They're on our map, and they're in Ezekiel chapter 38. Then there's the sons of Ham, verse 6. And we have Cush there, and you'll notice I put Mizraim in blue, and I'll explain the significance of that in a moment. So there's Cush and Phut, and then later on there is Sheba and Dedan. So where does this all fit together? Well, if we imagine the circumstance on the map where there has been the great flood, Noah, all the earth has been wiped out of people except for the 8 people that are on the ark. And after the flood has eased, the ark rests upon Mount Ararat, which is located on the map, and you can see where that is. It's on the border of what is modern-day Turkey. Well, what happens? The people in the descendants of Shem, Ham, and Japheth were told by God that they should go and replenish the earth. And this is in Genesis chapter 9. So in Genesis chapter 9, when they landed with the ark on dry ground again, it says, verse 1, and God blessed Noah and sons and said unto them, be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth. In other words, go and reestablish your presence throughout the earth. So what did they do? Well, we can track what they did. They get it off. So we find that Gomer, which is a nation that became in the latter days known as Gaul, they went to the area of Asia Minor. And we know that they went there because the Apostle Paul visited the place of the Galatians in the 1st century, and they are called Gauls. So, but they didn't stop there. They actually went all the way over to the territory we now know as France and associated countries. And then there was a branch of Gomer that went to Britain, became Tarshish. We also know that Meshech moved north, and for a while they lived in the area between the Black Sea and the Caspian, and then they progressed further up to what is now known as Moscow. And then there was a group from Meshech that went over to the territory labelled as Magog, area of Central and Eastern Europe. We find that also Tubal went this way, towards the Siberian end of what is now Russia. Now, if we now have a look at the descendants of Cush, the descendants of Canaan, as in Ham. So Cush, which was one of the sons, we find them in Bible times in several places. One place is in the Sinai Peninsula. We also find them being referred to in the territory now known as Sudan or Ethiopia. And the nation of Phut went over here to Libya and also to Algeria. Now you might remember that I mentioned Mizraim. Well, Mizraim is Egypt, and it's still the Hebrew name for Egypt. So again, that's evidence of which way the descendants of Ham went, isn't it? So we can find, if you like, little indicators all through history that establish which way they went. And we also know that some of them went down here, Dedan and Sheba, and that's in the territory of Saudi Arabia. And they also went across to the area of China. Now, the descendants of Shem, they stayed much in the area that they started off in. So they went into the territories, basically of the lands of Mesopotamia, right across the Mediterranean. So that's, if you like, a bit of background as to why these names are significant in Ezekiel chapter 38. They're drawn from Genesis chapter 10, and when we follow it through, we can establish the identity of these countries. So here's our map again, and we've looked at most of the countries there, or most of the names. One we haven't looked at, actually there's two. There's Persia. Well, that's fairly easy because that's the ancient name. Not so ancient, was up until last century the name for what is now Iran. But there's a big one, which is Rosh. Now, when we have a look at Ezekiel chapter 38 in our English Bible, if you've got a King James Bible, you won't see the word Rosh. But if we have a look at a range of other different translations, and I'm picking here to have an alternative translation in the Revised Version, we find that it's there. So in the King James Version, the expression in verse 2, chief prince, is rendered in the Revised Version, Prince of Rosh. So what does that mean? Rosh is Russia. We'll prove that in just a moment. So these names that are here, so Gog, there's literally the one at the top. And then we've got a reference to Magog, of the land of Magog. Now, some of the best Hebrew scholars say that should read in the land of Magog. Prince of Rosh, Meshech, and Tubal. Now, it's interesting that the first point of identification of this person, Gog, the one at the top who is going to lead the invasion, the first point of identification is being in the land of Magog. So you can just tuck that away in the back of your mind. We'll come back to that in a moment. So what about Rosh? The Prince of Rosh. How do we know that that is Russia? Well, there's a Hebrew called the Lexicon, written by a chap called Gesenius, who was a famous German scholar who was an expert in the Hebrew language. And he says it is a proper noun of a northern nation mentioned with Tubal and Meshech, undoubtedly the Russians. So he makes it pretty plain as to his understanding and gives proofs for that. Now, when we think about the area of Magog, in the land of Magog is the first point of identification. Well, funnily enough, there's something happening right now with Russia in the land of Magog, because we've got Ukraine circled on the map, and it's part of Magog. And how do we know that? Well, if we have a look again at some ancient authorities, Josephus, who wrote around about 75 AD, said that Magog founded those from him that were named Magogites. Well, it's not actually particularly helpful, that bit, but he goes on to say, who were by the Greeks called Scythians. And Jerome, who was a very famous Bible writer in 400 AD, said, Magog refers to the Scythian nations, fierce and innumerable. And Herodotus tells us where they were located, north of the Black Sea, between the River Don in Russia and the River Danube in Central Europe. So that's some points of identification. But interestingly enough, Ukraine as a country has realized that they are from the Scythians. Now, this particular page here from this website is from Radio Lemberg, and it's a Ukrainian radio station with their own website, and they did a series of stories on the history of Ukraine. And you can see that they've identified a particular area of Ukraine and said this is Scythia, 500 BC. And if you were to explore this further, this particular website, you'd see that there was many, many points of identification where they've done archaeological excavations and found evidence of the Scythians all through that area that's identified as a square there. Yeah. So, Ukraine is part of Magog. And we're told Gog, the first point of identification is in the land of Magog. And they're there today, aren't they? The war in Ukraine is still ongoing. Okay, so let's get back to our map of Ezekiel 38 again, and we'll have a look at another country, which is Gomer, just to confirm that Gomer is the Gauls. You might recall that I said that was the case. Now I'm going to try to give you some proof, together with some light-hearted proof. So if we go to some authorities, we can go to Josephus, Again, who's that historian? The Jewish historian from around about 75 AD, and he says Gomer founded those whom the Greeks called Galatians or Gauls. Encyclopedia Britannica says Gauls are Cimbri, Cimmerians. The Celts gave their name to northern France and Belgium. And of course, if we go to a very trusted resource in Asterix, Gaul, there's some entertaining things about Asterix, the Gaul. It identifies the Gauls as being in the territory of northern France. So we have that confirmed. So hopefully that establishes in everyone's mind that there is some credibility to the identification of the places that are mentioned in Ezekiel 38. Now let's start turning the action on. What happens? As we said before, in the chapter, it's all about the action of coming into the land of Israel. So in verse 8, we have the action turned on. After many days thou shalt be visited. In the latter years, remember, latter year is last, so this is the last of the end years. Thou shalt come into the land that is brought back from the sword, is gathered out of many people against the nation, the mountains of Israel, which have been always waste, but is brought forth out of the nations, and they shall dwell safely, all of them. Now, I'm going to suggest to you that that description of Israel can only apply at the time in which we are living. There is no time in history when that has applied, all of those things together. Well, it says here, brought back from the sword and gathered out of many people. Well, here's a picture taken from a book written by Martin Gilbert about the return of the Jews to the land. And here is one map indicating where the Jews came from between 1948 and 1964, from all sorts of countries. You can see them all there. And here for your information is the picture book. It's a very interesting book to have. But it also says that the place would have been always waste or always desolate. And that was the case when the Jews came back to the land last century. And if you look at those pictures there, they're pretty old pictures, but you'll find that there is no single tree in any of those pictures. But why would that be the case? Well, because the Ottoman Turks, who had controlled the territory of Palestine, now called Israel, had control of it for a long time, about 1,000 years. They had a tax on trees. So if you're a farmer, the first thing you do is cut down your trees to cut down your tax. And as a result of cutting down trees, what happens? Well, it's well established, isn't it? Many people know that trees contribute to giving you the climate that you need to have a successful agricultural production happening. So if you get rid of the trees, all of a sudden you've got a land that's desolate, that won't produce very much at all. So that's also fitting in with the prophecy, isn't it? And it's going to happen in the latter days. Well, the days identified is when Israel became a nation in 1948. Now, here is a very famous picture of Ben-Gurion announcing the state of Israel being established in 1948, 14th of May, 1948. It's interesting to note that in the time before this announcement was made, the Jews were wrestling with what they would call their new country. And it was by no means certain that it would be called Israel. They had all sorts of other names thought to be more appropriate. But in the end, they came down to the fact that they would go for Israel. And that's, of course, what Ezekiel 38 encompasses, isn't it? Because it talks about they're going to come into the mountains of Israel. So it had to be Israel. So all along in verse 8 of Ezekiel 38, we have this unique identification of the Jewish people in the land of Israel at our times. No other time in history fits. There's still a few things to happen because there's still got to be unwalled villages, verse 11. And thou shalt say, this is Gog is going to say, I will go up to the land of unwalled villages, to them that are at rest. So there's going to have to be a point where Israel has no longer got big walls around Palestinian territory. They're going to have to be removed. It implies a time of peace. And potentially after the current disturbances, the current wars that Israel are engaged in with the Palestinians, that could result in peace. Now, next thing is we've established that we've got the nations in the right places, those nations in red on the map, and they're going to come down into the land of Israel, Israel as we know it today. And in verse 13, we have some opposition. And it says, Sheba and Dedan and the merchants of Tarshish with all the young lions thereof shall say unto thee, unto Gog that is coming down, Art thou come to take a spoil? Hast thou gathered thy company to take a prey, to carry away silver and gold, to take away cattle and goods, to take a great spoil? So there's opposition. Opposition from Sheba and Dedan and Tarshish. Now this is also particularly interesting because it can only apply in a narrow period of time. Because you see, Sheba and Dedan are identified as on the map in the area of Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, etc. That area of the Gulf states. Now, I'll just circle them here so that you can see them clearly. Now, what's significant about that? Well, just this, that they have only recently turned from being enemies of Israel, to being friends of Israel. And this is very recent. 2020, the Abraham Accords. This is a picture of the White House where there was signatories on peace agreements between the UAE, Bahrain and Israel. And they've all got big smiles on their faces. But if you go back not many years before that, we notice that in the wars that Israel fought against the Arab nations, that those from Saudi Arabia were very much fighting against Israel. And you can see on the map where they've come from. So the Gulf states are amongst the Arab nations that invaded and tried to destroy Israel in June 1967. Now that was their second of three attempts. They did it in 1948 when Israel was first proclaimed as a nation, and they tried again in 1973. So what a turnaround. So this can only fit in the time period since 2020, when they officially would object to Israel being invaded. Isn't that interesting? Now also we have mention amongst those that rejected the idea of Gog coming into Israel, we have the nation of Tarshish, merchants of Tarshish. What is Tarshish in the Bible? Now we've said before on the map that it's the UK, Britain. How can we prove that? Well, this could be a study all in itself that could take us an evening to go through. But I'm just going to present a very quick slide that I think provides the answer quite quickly. When we have a look at the word Tarshish in the Bible, it is used in several places. So in Psalm 72, it describes Tarshish as an island power. In Isaiah 60 and verse 9, Tarshish is a maritime power. In Jonah 1 and Isaiah 23, Tarshish is located to the extreme west of Israel. In Ezekiel 38, it's represented as a merchant power and also as under the symbol of a lion. And the real clincher is in Ezekiel 27 verse 12, where it's a source of tin. So I've got that quoted down the bottom of the slide. So Ezekiel 27 is a chapter about the nation of the Phoenicians. In particular, the power of the city of Tyre, and Tyre had a merchant fleet that was operative through all the area of the Mediterranean. And it says, Tarshish was thy merchant by reason of the multitude of all kinds of riches, with silver, iron, tin, and lead they traded in thy fairs. So Tarshish contributed to the maritime trade of Tyre tin. And this is very significant because in that period, there was only one source of tin in the whole world, and that was Britain. Here is, for example, the Penguin Atlas of World History, which shows in the ancient times, this is times around 500 BC, when Ezekiel was writing, where various minerals came from. And there's little symbols of gold and silver and copper and lead and tin. And the only place you'll find the tin is in Cornwall in Britain. The only place. And of course, tin was an absolutely vital metal in those days because that's how you made bronze. And through the Bronze Age and the Iron Age, weapons were mainly of bronze. So you mixed tin and copper to create bronze, which made a much stronger metal that was useful so that you could actually have sharp edges with it. Isn't that interesting? But there's another layer to this too that identifies us also more strongly with the age, with the times in which we live. And that is, just recently there was a thing called Brexit, wasn't there? When Britain left Europe. It started with in 2016 when there was a referendum on the subject, and it was finally implemented by the end of 2021. Britain officially left Europe. Why is that significant? Well, you see, Europe is amongst those countries that were coming against Israel in the prophecy, isn't it? But Britain has to oppose that. When Britain was part of the European Union, they were not in a position to do that. They would have to act in concert with their other European partners, wouldn't they? But now they don't have to. They can have an independent set of foreign affairs and foreign principles, can't they? So that sort of sets the scene as to the prophecy is uniquely in our days. It's all set up to happen, but it still doesn't answer one important question. Why would Russia lead an invasion to the land of Israel? Related to that, which I'm not going to explore, is why would the mainland European countries support Russia doing that? Mainland Europe is dead against Russia at the present point in time, so that would have to change. But why would Russia want to come there anyway? Well, I think there's some very interesting things to sort out. First of all, Russia is well on the way to being in the land of Israel. Because you see, I've added on this map Syria. You can see Syria there. What's significant about Syria? Well, since there was the beginning of the civil war in Syria in 2013, 2 years after that, Russia jumped in to help to support Assad, who is the president of Syria. How are they supporting Assad? Well, they've got Russian points of presence all through Syria. In mid-2022, they had 132. You can see where they're located on the map. This is where they have troops on the ground. So, with that sort of presence in the nation of Syria, who's in control? Well, I think the world really knows who's in control. It's not really Assad who's in control anymore. He's just one of the pieces on the chess game. It's Mr. Putin who's got control of Syria. Now, we won't go any further in that, but if you do some internet searches and research, you'll discover this is very, very true, and that, in fact, quite often Mr. Putin makes decisions on what's going to happen in Syria without even talking to Assad. He might talk to the Iranians, but not get around to talk to the Syrians. Another important ingredient that's happened just recently, which has got to do with the Ukraine war, is that Mr. Netanyahu has finally realised that Russia is no friend of Israel. Now, I've been to Israel 4 times in my life, and I enjoy very much going to Israel. It's where the Bible comes alive. The last 2 times I've been there, talking to people in Israel about this chapter, Ezekiel 38, and saying that Russia is going to invade Israel. I say, oh, no, Mr. Perry, you've got it all wrong. Russia isn't going to invade Israel. They're our friend. We get on very well with them. But it's changed. And as this article goes on to say, before the war in Ukraine, Israel and Russia enjoyed positive strategic relations. The bond and trust between Putin and Netanyahu had allowed Israel to operate against Hezbollah and Iranian targets within Syria and Iran, actions that necessitated quiet consent from Russia. Relations between the two countries, however, deteriorated since Israel decided to stand by Ukraine. It's amazing, isn't it? Israel really had no choice but to stand by Ukraine because, well, what nationality, what religious background is Zelensky, who heads up Ukraine? He's Jewish, isn't he? So, of course, helping the Ukrainians was not exactly what Mr. Putin had in mind. So that's one, if you like, piece of evidence that there might be a reason for Russia to come against Israel. Another thing that is happening that will, I think, impact this particular decision of Russia is this one. Russia and the energy transition. Once upon a time, it was all petrol or diesel cars, wasn't it? And now there's these things called electric cars. And Tesla are making lots of money out of producing and selling electric cars, aren't they? And many countries in Europe have announced that they're going to only have electric cars for sale from various dates in the next 10 years. And there was an announcement just recently from Volvo that they've decided to just extend the date from 2030 to 2032 when they will be 100% electric vehicles. Well, think about what that means for Mr. Putin. Because when you have a look at Russia's exports, and this is exports from Russia in 2022, here's a map of it, and 63% of it is fossil fuels. So within 10 years, that's going to go pretty well down to zero. So do you think that might be a little bit daunting for the president of Russia? I think it is extremely concerning. 63% of your external income as a country is going to disappear. What are you going to do then? Well, the obvious thing is to say, well, we'll substitute other things. We'll get into the business of exporting other things. Well, when you look at what countries can export, there's a whole range of different things. Some countries make a lot of money out of exporting agricultural products, and Russia is already the 5th largest wheat exporter in the world. Some countries make money out of education. For example, Australia. We do a lot of educating of people from other countries. Some countries make money out of financial and insurance services. So London is the financial capital of that part of the world, isn't it? The Brits make a lot out of that. Others are manufacturing countries like China. Others do it out of minerals. Australia is a star there, isn't it? Others do it out of technology. Israel is one of the great stars there, or tourism or transport. But if you think about the opportunities for Russia, what have they got? Well, they can try to boost their agriculture, but they can't go much further because, well, most of their land is so often covered in ice and snow, and it's not very effective for wheat production. So that's sort of the case. They can increase it, but it's not going to amount to much. They've got a lot of minerals, huge amounts of minerals, particularly in Siberia and in more frozen parts of Russia. Yes, they can get minerals there, but they would be one of the highest cost producers in the world because of the difficulty of the environment there. So that's not going to work really well either. So what have they got? What opportunities have they got? Well, technology is an opportunity because, you see, there's this country called Israel. And just in the last few weeks, July the 18th, this was announced from The Economist, that Google very nearly bought an Israeli startup called Wiz, a startup company with only about 1,000 employees total. They'd only been going a matter of 4 years, and Google was prepared to pay $23 billion to buy it. And the only reason it didn't go ahead is because the owners of Wiz said, "Oh, look, you were really looking more for $100 billion, actually. So we're not selling right now." Now, this is just one of many Israeli startups. Huge numbers of startups. If you look at what's happening with AI, artificial intelligence, where is so much of the research of that happened? Israel. Where does Intel have their R&D facility, their main R&D facility now? It's not in America. It's in Israel. Israel is the leader in technology. So here's an opportunity for Russia to come down and sweep down and take all that technology. That would give them some technology to sell to the rest of the world. Now, we cannot be prophets about what will happen in the future in terms of this sort of thing, but it seems as though there is sufficient points of evidence, sufficient points of concern that would show us where Russia might go. So when we progress further in the chapter, we discover what happens, and God intervenes. So we looked in verse 13 about how the Sheba and Dedan and the merchants of Tarshish say, "Hey, you shouldn't be doing this, you shouldn't be coming into the land of Israel," but they don't do anything. But in verse 18, God steps into the situation. "And it shall come to pass at the same time, when Gog shall come against the land of Israel, saith the Lord God, that my fury shall come up into my face, for in my jealousy and the fire of my wrath have I spoken. Surely in that day there shall be a great shaking in the land of Israel." And the chapter goes on to say it's not just a big earthquake, although as we said before, it's a very big earthquake. But there is going to be, verse 21, "I will call for a sword against him out throughout all my mountains. Every man's sword shall be against his brother." So those who are the invaders, the Russian-led confederacy, are going to end up killing themselves. And this is commonly the case reported in history when there is suddenly an unexpected turn of events in a war. People get confused as to who is the enemy. But God's going to continue this trouble. Verse 22, "I will plead against him with pestilence and with blood." We know what a pestilence is like. We had one just recently, didn't we, called COVID. It has quite a negative effect on people's effectiveness to work. "I'll rain upon him in his bands and upon many people that are with him, and overflowing rain and great hailstones, fire and brimstone." So God's going to intervene in a very dramatic way, isn't he? Now, in the New Testament, this is called Armageddon. It's in Revelation chapter 16 and verse 16, where it says, "And he gathered," that is, God gathered them into the place called, in the Hebrew tongue, Armageddon. And what is this the precursor of? It is the precursor of the return of Jesus Christ. We haven't got time to prove that in detail tonight, but from time to time, we do have lectures that explain that this is the time of the return of Jesus Christ. Now, that we expect Jesus Christ to return is evident from various scriptures. Acts chapter 1, verse 11, where angels were speaking to those who were the apostles or the disciples of Jesus Christ. And they said, "This same Jesus which is taken up from you into heaven shall so come in like manner as ye have seen him go into heaven." A clear statement that we expect Jesus Christ to return to the earth from the heavens. What's he going to do? Well, he's going to establish a kingdom. Matthew 25, verse 31 to 34, "When the Son of Man shall come in his glory and all the holy angels with him, then he shall sit upon the throne of his glory." Thrones where kings sit, isn't it? So he's going to be a king. What's he going to do? Well, he's going to establish the kingdom of God. Now, this is again a subject all on its own, but we're just going to have a quick look at a few things. Within the Bible, we're told what this kingdom of God is going to be like. And it's the positive thing we're really looking for out of all this. In reality, Christadelphians are not so fascinated in there being a war between Russia and Israel. or there being a war between Russia and Ukraine. We're not so interested in the wars. What we're interested in is the things that tell us that the kingdom of God is coming, because this is what we're looking for. So the king is going to be Jesus Christ. The territory is going to be Israel plus much more. The capital city is going to be Jerusalem. The result is going to be universal peace. There's going to be no poverty. There's going to be a rejuvenated earth, and there is going to be eternal life for those who are, quote, saved, unquote. In other words, those who are the true followers of Christ. So that Jesus Christ is going to be king is something that is a clear prophecy in the scriptures. In Luke chapter 1, verse 31 to 33, where the angel Gabriel appeared to Mary, the mother of Jesus, and said to Mary, "The Lord God shall give unto him," that is this child you're going to have born, "the throne of his father David, and of his kingdom there shall be no end." Jerusalem's going to be the capital of the world. In Ezekiel chapter 40 to 48, which we referred to briefly before, here is what's known as the temple that's going to be established in that day, but it's also going to be the capital city, the place where Jesus Christ will reside and those who are his followers. There's going to be universal peace. Isaiah 2 says, "They shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war any more." Interesting thing about the picture there, you could see a man beating a sword into a plowshare. And this is a sculpture that's at the United Nations building, York. It was provided by the USSR, which seems a little perverse, doesn't it, that they should talk about that when, in fact, the history of Russia ever since has not been one of converting swords into plowshares, but almost the opposite. There's going to be joy and happiness. Isaiah 35 says, "The ransomed of the Lord shall return and come to Zion with everlasting joy upon their heads, and they shall obtain gladness, and sorrow and sighing shall flee away." And all the peoples of the earth will come and worship God once every year. In Zechariah chapter 14, it says, "It shall come to pass that everyone that is left of the nations which came up against Jerusalem," in other words, not the majority, because they've already died, this is the remnant, "shall go up from year to year to worship the King, the Lord of hosts, and to keep the Feast of Tabernacles." Christ's immortalized followers, we're going to rule the world. Now, this is potentially us, right? If we are followers of Jesus Christ, baptized into Jesus Christ, faithful followers of Jesus Christ, then we can be amongst the people ruling the world. Revelation 5 verse 10, "Thou hast made us unto our God kings and priests, and we shall reign on the earth." In Revelation 2 verse 26, "And he that overcometh and keepeth my works unto the end, to him will I give power over the nations." So that's a pretty amazing promise, isn't it? To be not only immortal, but also ruling with Jesus Christ to rule the world. What do we have to do to get this? It's actually an amazingly simple thing. All we need to do is believe the truth of the gospel and be baptized. We don't have to write out a check for $1 million. We don't have to do some great feat like climbing Mount Everest. Just says, "He that believeth," that is the gospel, "and is baptized shall be saved. He that believeth not shall be condemned." It's a wonderful, wonderful opportunity, isn't it? And may it be that all of us take part in that opportunity so that we can be with Jesus Christ in that wonderful day, which is very close, as is evidenced by this prophecy in Ezekiel 38 about the soon-to-be invasion of Israel by Russia.